I've been very fortunate, I think, to be involved with a group of girls that have a great attitude.
Doctors at the Mayo Clinic diagnosed me with an early onset dementia, Alzheimer's type.
If anyone deserves it, the University of Tennessee deserves it. They've made a great commitment to women's athletics and in particular women's basketball, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Joan Cronan, it's always great to see you, an honor to talk to you. So thank you for taking some time for us.
Thrilled to be here.
We're going to talk about someone who, it's hard to believe, has been gone 10 years.
Absolutely.
A good friend of yours.
Well, just a good friend of all. Yeah. You know, I give so many speeches and I get questions, and everybody says, what made Pat so great? And lots of reasons, but her humility was incredible. Yeah. For somebody of her stature, her humility was just unbelievable.
10 years later, how does she keep showing up in your life?
Almost every day. Almost every day. Quick story, I always use the example of what we taught kids and what we wanted to teach, and one of them in camps were make up your bed. And so I can remember her walking in the gym and saying, how many of you made up your bed today, in that big gym voice? And a few the first day and the next day, and then everybody was waving their hand. Well, you know, the day she died, Tyler called me about 6 o'clock in the morning and said, Joan, Mom just went to heaven. And we had a game plan, naturally game plan. We had to have a game plan. And we talked about what we would do. And my job was to get to the facility and be with her there and be sure that it was about family and friends, you know, and not about the world at that time. So I'm walking out of my house, and I turned around, and my bed was unmade. So guess what I did? I went back and made up my bed. So that from that time to now, every time I make up my bed, I think about her. Now, I use that in speeches. And about a month ago, I'm walking across Market Square, and this lady sees me come in, and she recognizes me. I don't, but I'm trying to be friendly. Sure. And I said, hi, how are you doing today? And she said, well, I was until I saw you. And my little heart went boom. And she said, I heard you speak. And since then, I've made up my bed every day for a year and a half, except today. So somebody else was thinking about pat-summitt as we go. So just so many, just the little things.
Her message just resonates. It goes on and on, and that's how she continues
Absolutely.
To live.
And she lives in our heart as well as our brain, and we walk by the statue, and we know she was famous across the world. I could be walking across the streets of Paris and have the Lady Vol logo on, and somebody would say, do you know pat-summitt? And I would say, of course, yes.
What was Pat like in the private moments? I think we all, just from seeing her interviews, from watching the many documentaries, we get a sense of the force she was on camera.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was she like off camera?
Off camera, she was similar because she was always online, but she was, as I said, the humility, the ability to reach out to people and to care about people was so, I can't tell you how many times I get stopped and say, well, Joan, Pat went to the hospital and visited my grandmother, or Pat signed these autographs. The day we announced, or she announced, the last game she coached, we had lost to Baylor. We were out in Oklahoma City, and I looked, and she was going into the bus, and there was thousands of little girls waiting to say hi. She stood out in front of the bus and signed autographs until the last minute before we could catch the plane. That was Pat. She was going to give until the very end, even after she had been given a tough loss and knew it was her last game she was going to coach. She was thinking about others.
As a friend, as with all friends, we have that strong bond. But did you ever have any disagreements? Anything that you butted heads
most
about?
People say, Did you get the stare?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you get the stare?
Get the stare? That's the question.
Yeah, of course we did. There were times, but I do remember one major one, and I won't go into the details, but I'll tell you I was right, and I always remember it. But she did listen, and she always came in. Somebody says, "How is it to work for a prima donna, or work with a prima donna?" Right. And she wasn't. I mean, of all the coaches I've ever worked with, she would come in and say, "Joan, what do you think about this? What is the detail? What do you think this would be good if we tried to do this?" So she was so thorough and so attention to detail. And the thing that I would say is, "Why do you want to do that?" Mm-hmm. And her answer to me every time was, "It's good for the game." It wasn't ever, "It was good, be good for this, that, or other."
Or herself.
Yeah, it was good. It's good for the game. So, we did crazy things like play Connecticut back-to-back, go play on a ship out in Arizona, and, things to promote the game. And that was her main interest. She really wanted to give women an opportunity, and she loved the game of basketball. And everybody says, what made Pat a great coach? Mm-hmm. What made her a great coach is she was a great teacher. She looked at the basketball court as her classroom. And every day, that's what she was going to teach a class, and that was real important.
Her bar was so high. She's synonymous with excellence. Where did that come from?
If you ever met Pat's dad, he was a stickler. I made the mistake of my first away game sitting next to him at Vanderbilt. I learned I don't need to do that because he wanted it all to be perfect. And that's really where she got that. She had to strive to make him pleased.
Did she ever doubt herself? I mean, to look at her and because clearly she reached out and wanted to hear from you. And of course, you had your moment where you got the stare and you were right.
Yeah.
Did you ever see those moments of self-doubt and reflection?
Yeah. But, Pat was always, she would reflect and then she would go forward. Mm-hmm. Time I remember, we lost to Xavier in the regional finals. And I didn't even know how to spell Xavier, much less think we would lose to Xavier.
Is it X or Z?
Yeah. And so after the game, we talked a little bit. And about 6 o'clock the next morning, my phone rang. And it was Pat. She said, "Joan, that loss was my fault." And I said, "Pat, it's your fault." And she said, "Yes." She said, they ran an offense that I didn't understand as much as I should. And then what was important was the next thing she said. That's never going to happen again. And can I bring in XYZ coaches that we could work with that they could teach me and my staff? So here was somebody considered one of the best in the country ever, and she's still wanting to learn. So I think that would be a way, even when she doubted herself, she wanted to correct it.
Her leadership style, is it something that is in and of itself, would it resonate today? Does it still resonate today?
Oh, absolutely. I think her control was a big part of what she did, And I think in today's world, she could adjust with the times, and I think that was important. But her leadership style was such that it was all about what our goals are. And that's what you and I do every day. What are my goals? What am I going to get done today? What can I do to help somebody else? And that's what she was always thinking about. So, yes, I think, when Sally Jenkins, the leading writer, came in and was writing a book, she sat down with both Pat and myself and said, What do y'all do? What are your goals? What are you doing? And, of course, we had the typical things that you do in education. And she said, "No, I want to figure out 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's when we developed the definite dozen. And the definite dozen is things that we want the young ladies to learn before. And there's a lot of good ones in there, and I suggest your readers, your listeners really listen to this. But one of them that gets me is discipline yourself before someone else has to discipline you. When we think about that, we all self-talk, and we all say, "Well, I didn't do a good job that time. What can I do to do?" And they were just time and time again. I remember the one, left foot, right foot, breathe. You got to keep going. You You can't stop. So yeah, Pat had goals, and she had examples of everything, and she did such a good job of letting people know she cared about them. You know, I know you're interviewing a lot of our athletes, and I just think that's what you'll hear time and time again. Pat knew me. Pat cared about me.
Yeah, Michelle Marciniak, as a matter of fact, we spoke with. She cared about her. She was tough on her.
Yes.
She said it was, there were some moments I felt I was at the brink, but she cared.
Yeah.
In the end.
And I think that nobody knows what you know until they know how much you care. And Pat had a way. And, you know, everybody said, why did they call her Pat rather than Coach Summitt or those kind of things? And one of the reasons is she was so tough. She wanted them to feel a little bit closer to her, and that was her way of doing that, is it was okay to call her Pat as long as it was with respect.
The game has changed vastly in warp speed. What do you think, not that you can speak for her, but what do you think she would think of the game and the changing world of sports, women's sports, NIL, the transfer portal? What do you think?
We probably would be thinking the same thing. We don't like some of the things were happening, but Pat, again, would have adapted. You know, she would have taken the best of what we have to do and still set her goals. You know, I call the portal the cesspool. That tells you how much I like about it, because it takes away what we can do to teach. It takes away what I and Pat got into the business, was to learn discipline, to learn all of these things. And some of them are going to be good, and we're going to figure out over the next 4 or 5 years how to make it work. But she would be really proud of the caliber of athletes, the caliber of coaches that we have, and how much. I mean, I turn on the television set every Sunday afternoon, and not only do we have players playing in the pros and they're getting a lot of attention, but the television media people we have out in the world, the radio media people, the presidents of corporations, you know, all those young ladies have gone on to be very successful, and that's what it's all about. If I was head of Westinghouse, my product would be a washing machine. Mm-hmm. But as athletic director and Pat as coach of the Lady Vols, our products were all those young ladies that came to the program. If you ask me what makes me happy, is to get a phone call and somebody say, Joan, guess what? This happened. And just for them to be excited and know that we would want to know about it.
Well, that just gets to the question I was going to ask you, but you answered it beautifully. How much of the success in women's sports can be brought back to pat-summitt, to the program, to women's sports, UT women's sports?
Yeah. You know, UT said yes to women before it was cool, and that was really exciting. And, of course, it was fun for me to come in as athletic director. I get credit for hiring Pat, but I didn't. I kept her. So I thought that was just as important. But she was here. In fact, she actually mentioned to me when she was over in Charleston. I was athletic director at the College of Charleston. And we were both recruiting the same girl in Charleston. Georgia got her, so we both lost. But I think she got me in that visit because she said, the AD's job is coming open at Tennessee. Would you consider applying? And I thought, what a dream come true to be able to work with Pat and to be able to help promote a program that can make a difference. In fact, my late husband said, we've got to go, Joan. That's your goal. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to make a difference nationally, and you can do that from Tennessee's platform. And obviously being able to work with Pat helped that. And, you know, the Karen Weekleys of the world, who I'm very, very proud of what Karen's doing. And we've just had so many great coaches, but it was because Tennessee said yes, and we were able to take that. But I think our goals were high. But as far as setting the trail, she said it. I mean, it's amazing how many times coaches call and say, you know, Pat helped me learn this. And every time I turned around, she had another coach visiting her to come in and watch practice and watch all the things. So, yes, she was a trailblazer, and yes, she is a legend.
She has sealed that legacy in women's sports. But I think, and I'm sure you would agree with this, her legacy continues on when it comes to awareness of a horrible disease that ended up taking her life, that of Alzheimer's.
Yeah, again, she handled that with the class that we would have expected. I will never forget the day. We knew Pat was struggling. But Pat had arthritis, and we all thought it was the medication because of that, because she was trying to change it. But she walked in my office and she said, Joan, I've just been diagnosed with dementia, Alzheimer's strand, and early stages dementia, Alzheimer's strand. And I had never at that time dealt with it, with Alzheimer's.
How did you feel in that moment?
Well, I knew something was going on, but she said it was such her way, you
like
know.
Pat.
Yeah, this is what I have. And then she said, I want to do two things. I want to make a difference in this disease, and I want to help with research, and I want to help with caregivers. So she immediately knew the importance of that caregiver with this disease. And so Pollyanna Joan said, well, Pat, it's early stages. That's good. I'd been dealing with new cancer, and so she said, no, early stages with Alzheimer's means you're younger and it moves faster.
It's more aggressive.
So then Pollyanna continued, and I said, well, Pat, we'll say dementia because Alzheimer's sometimes scares people.
Right.
And she said, no, we will say I have early stages dementia also. And if you watch any of her videos, that's exactly what she says. And so we went on to form a foundation and in her honor, and I'm so proud of it. We have the Pat-Summitt Clinic. We've developed a Pat-Summitt game plan that's online for the caregivers. It's just an incredible service to help that disease, and I know she would be proud.
It had to be so hard for you to walk this walk with her and to walk as you could continue to see the decline.
It was, but in Pat's way, she made it easier for all of us because she could still laugh. She could still joke. She loved to cook. She could still get involved. But to watch the Pat that you knew that never hesitated, that could make a decision like that and go forward, just kind of disappear, is tough. I think that's what hurts the caregivers and hurts all of those that are so close, is you just watch somebody disappear. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're trying to do with the foundation, to help people learn to face that.
Once again, her legacy continues in many ways.
She is a legend, and she also is somebody we continue to love.
We're going to lighten things up a bit. Funniest memory you have at Pat-Summitt?
Oh, gosh.
There's probably too many to
There's
sort
probably
down.
so many. Well, I think it's the one that we know that's real visible is one when she put on the cheerleader's uniform and sang the Rocky Top. Bruce Pearl had painted his chest and come to a game, so she didn't want a Lady Vol game and cheered. So she kept saying, what can I do to, and she said, I know.
One up them.
Yeah. And, I worked with Pat for 30 years. We went to the White House and won 8 national championships and was there for all of that. But I've never seen her blood pressure as high as she was that evening that she put that cheerleader outfit and that feathered cap, because she was doing something she's not used to.
She's in control typically.
And so it was really fun.
There.
But, that's the point that we all remember, that she, again, giving back, being a part, and getting everybody involved.
And never taking yourself too seriously.
Yeah. And she had a way of doing that. She never was what I call a prima donna. She never was somebody that said, look at me. It was always what we're doing. And that's what I think all leaders need to learn. You can't do it all. It's what we do. It's not what I do.
When someone walks on campus today, 10 years after her passing, how is Pat felt on campus? And of course, there's a statue.
Yeah, the plaza, and I can go by there anytime, day or night. And there's always somebody out there taking a picture or just sitting down. So to me, it was the perfect place to recognize her. But they still, when they think of Tennessee, the people you remember are the Pat-Summitts, the General Nealons, the Peyton Mannings, and Candace Parkers. And those are people that we will remember forever, and because of not only what they did, but who they are. Mm-hmm. And I think Pat will always be considered a leader. And we would travel, and she would always say, this is my boss, Joan Cronan, and I would laugh and said, Pat's never had a boss. I don't like to think I've had a boss, but we work really well together. And I think that's what, and we were completely different, in what our skill sets were. And so we made a good team, and I'm thrilled to have been a part of that team.
Well, that's probably why it worked so well, because you were different. And in coming together, you were able to do something even greater.
I remember one of the toughest decisions I made, and kind of leaders sometimes have to draw the line in the sand. When I interviewed for this job at Tennessee as athletic director, Thompson Bowling was under construction, and the women were going to stay in Stokely and play. They were going to redo it, and Pat was excited because she would have the gym all to herself. She wouldn't have to share with, and et cetera, et cetera. And I simply said, if we're not going to play in the new arena, I don't want to be the AD here. And fortunately, they said, okay. And so we did. And one of the nicest notes I ever got from Pat, and it was, one, Pat wanted it all to her own. Two, they were concerned over attendance. And was it going to be too big for the women to play in? And of course, in my mind, it's not too big. Why not?
Fill it.
Yeah, let's just fill it. And the first game, we sold it out. I had people standing outside. Couldn't get tickets, so I went out personally and gave them tickets to the next game where they could come back. And so it was really a nice note from Pat that evening. It just said, you were right. And that was, and so sometimes you have to make those decisions that are, as a leader, that are a little bit off, because nobody was doing it because we were just women and we weren't important. They were doing for what they thought was good. And yet I wanted a bigger vision, and, obviously, we went on to lead the country in attendance, and we're like 2 and 3 and 4 in the men's attendance records. And so it was just so much fun to watch that happen.
If there were a young college basketball player sitting down with pat-summitt today in front of her, giving her a pep talk, sharing wisdom, what would she say to her? I
think the first thing she would share with her, you're so lucky. You have an opportunity to make a difference. She would share with them that hard work is ahead. She would share with them that I'm going to be with you through that process and help make you better. But I think she would share that your goals need to be higher. Just always reach higher. And, there's a statistics that 94% of the women in the C seats in corporations participate in athletics. Because I think it's not only the game, but it's what it teaches you about teamwork. And there's other ways. I'm not saying you can't be successful if you aren't athletic, because I think you can be tap dance and debate and all that, but the key is you have to learn to compete. And that's what makes athletics so good, is that it teaches you to win and lose and all of those things.
Perseverance.
So, but I think Pat would say, first thing, she was really proud of how the game progressed. And I think that's what she would tell this young lady.
Final question, and I asked this same question to Michelle Marcini.
Hey, are we not glad Michelle's back in Knoxville, Tennessee? See, I've obviously worked with the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame from the day we laid the first brick. But Michelle is perfect to be the executive director. She's CEO. She's perfect because she has such a passion. And I've just seen so much excitement, and I'm thrilled to have her back. And, I think she's thrilled to be back in Knoxville.
Do you see that as another example of Pat's legacy?
Oh, absolutely. Why would she want to come back if Pat had taught her that this was a good thing? And I see her work ethic, I see her passion and her dream so well. And so right now, as I said, I'm on a lot of boards, but I'm on the board of the Basketball Hall of Fame and the Pat-Summitt Foundation. And we just have great executive directors there, and it makes me proud.
I asked her, I said, if you were blessed with one more conversation with Pat-Summitt, what would you say? What would you say?
It wouldn't have to be long. It would just be thank you. It would really be thank you. And, when I think about what Pat does and what she did and what she continues to do in everything, as we watch the things like what we're doing right now, is dreaming and talking about what made us good, I think Pat would be very, very proud. And I think she always took the time to think about what she was doing and why she was doing it. But she could be focused. I loved that focus, and she could. The thing that everybody else asked me, how about Pat? I would simply say she can multitask better than anybody I've ever worked with. You know, she could have Tyler on her hip, stirring the pot, and the phone, being able to recruit. So, but I think she would say thank you to helping her make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're a treasure. Thank you.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. What a great community we live in, and what a great opportunity. And I am so proud of what's happening at the University of Tennessee right now. We have the best leadership between Randy Boyd and Dante Plowman and Danny White as AD. I'm a big cheerleader. I'm not going to put on the feather cap and the cheerleader on uniform, but I am a huge cheerleader of what's happening today in Knoxville.
We will leave that outfit to pat-summitt.
Yes.
Joan Cronan, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. You do pretty good yourself.
Thank you.